The Empire cannot win. If it goes up in flames,
it will burn very brightly.
We must stand together. We will be crushed.
welcome to the rebellion.
All right, welcome everyone to our Andor Season 2 review show. 3 more episodes have been released, and the Rebels joining us to discuss them this week are the wonderful Si, aka Mangafandanga, Andy, aka Delvian, and making his debut onto our channel for the first time, Connor of Fuller's Figures. How are we doing, gents? All good?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
All ready to discuss a bit of Andor?
Yeah.
Good. Well, let's get the spoiler warning out of the way then. A lot has happened in these episodes, so we will have to spoil them for anyone who hasn't already watched, so come back later for our review. Let's get on with it. Connor, not included in these 3 episodes that we're talking about tonight, how have you enjoyed the first 2 arcs of Andor so far?
I've really enjoyed it. I was a big fan of Rogue One. I think just from the storytelling perspective, just getting that, how the rebellion got started against the Empire. So when Andor rocked around, I was kind of already invested in it. So loved Andor Season 1. Now when Season 2 kicked off, then again, it kind of picked up. It had the same kind of pacing that I enjoyed, the same kind of deep storytelling, the slow arcs of character building everything that I enjoyed from Season 1 just straight away kicked off into Season 2. So
yeah. Si, first 2 weeks of Andor.
I haven't liked it, to be fair with you.
Not loving it.
For me, it's just getting so far removed now what Star Wars actually meant to me. And I thought it was bad with the Acolyte. Then I thought it was even far removed with the realistic tone of the Skeleton Crew. But this, it's like when they go in that corner shop, I'm like, hang on a minute, there's a corner shop here. It's just, I don't know. It just seems to be so realistic that a long time ago in a galaxy far away seems to be a lot closer than we thought, so.
Okay. I get that. Andy, how about yourself?
I have enjoyed it. I think for the first 2 arcs for me, my enthusiasm's been a bit more muted. I still think there's a few issues with pacing. I've been enjoying the 3 episodes in a go, even though it's a bit of a struggle to watch them all before you get hit by spoilers. But overall, I've been enjoying it. I have been really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, and how prior to this release, how have you rated the show so far then, out of 10?
I think I was about 7 for the first arc, and I think I went up to about 7.5 for the second arc.
Okay.
So it's.
Okay.
I'm hard to please.
Yeah. Well, I'll go to Connor next. Your rating out of 10?
I would be up there high. I would easily kind of 8.59.
Yeah.
And again, purely because I'm enjoying the story.
Yeah.
So for me, I'd give it a high mark.
Fair enough. Okay. Si,
I'll give it a 3.
A 3.
I'll give it a 3 because it's I won't say one thing about it. It's the most beautifulest looking show I've ever seen ever. The aesthetics, and whoever did the set design and lighting for this show, give them an Oscar now. It just looks beautiful. Every single episode just looks beautiful. It really does. It doesn't matter if it is the buildings or things in people's houses, or it's just the architecture of how it's filmed, and everything just looks amazing. So I can't say it's absolutely horrid, and it's brought me watching every single week. And if there is a character that has kept me watching it, it's definitely been Dedra. That's one that you think this character is she's crazy. Do you know what I mean? So she has kept me watching. But overall, I'll give it a 3. That's what I'll give it. Again, for the sake of it's not much Star Wars to me.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well, the main storylines then this week were the Yavin 4 storyline and the Gorman storyline, and pretty much that was it. You know, there was a little bit on Coruscant, mainly towards the third episode of the arc. So let's sort of discuss the Yavin part of things to begin with, because we're seeing the Rebel Alliance actually start to build. Connor, give us your thoughts. Are you enjoying seeing Yavin again and seeing it build the way it is?
Yeah, and particularly because we seen it in the first 3 episodes. Well, Andor. Now, albeit we didn't know it was Yavin at the time, but now that we've seen the sort of the rebel kind of army starting to build, and they've got infrastructure there, and the ships starting to land, you really can appreciate what they were trying to achieve with the first arcs. Kind of this displaced group of rebels that kind of were disorganized, and from that perspective, yeah, seeing Yavin developing into the rebel base that we knew from Star Wars has been really enjoyable.
Yeah. So, Andy, do we think some of those guys from that first arc are like in place on Yavin there, or what do you think happened to them?
I think quite a few of them got eaten in that first arc.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Incidentally, one of those guys from that first arc, just a bit of trivia, is Gilroy's son, Tony Gilroy's son. The guy with the beard is Tony Gilroy's son. But no, I mean, I don't know if it was connected at all, because that was another rebel cell, so it's quite possible, sort of like they started to establish it. I mean, I love going back to Yavin. Yavin is kind of like my favourite sort of like rebellion, sort of base, really. I have to say, I mean, I didn't have an issue between the sort of the time jump between the first arc and the second arc, but I did kind of have a bit of I didn't have an issue, but it was a shame you didn't see more about sort of like Yavin sort of like getting established and stuff, but I kind of understand why. So
yeah. Well, there's quite a bit going on Yavin still. You know, we're seeing all of these different alien ships, astromech droids.
Lots.
So you say that it doesn't feel like Star Wars to you. Does that part of it at least feel like Star Wars?
I will say, yeah, for Yavin, yeah, because it takes you right back to Star Wars. It takes you right back to, what you first saw. And, any scenes of anything like that, your nostalgia, it's tweaked a bit. I do agree with Andy. I wish it would have been a lot more fleshed out. Like, it just seemed to be like, this is where we are. Oh, guess where this is? Now we're here. So it was a bit like that for me when, considering the taking on the Empire, it should have been a lot more of a bigger build-up, considering it is the team that's going to do it. But yeah, it's always great seeing Yavin, always.
Yeah, and we actually get to see a few sort of different areas of Yavin. You see where they're actually camped out and whatnot, and you see the other people within. Martin, there was a scene with a force healer. Talk to me about
that. Yeah. I'll start off being negative, shall I? What was that all about? I mean, I know it's something in Legends. It's in like the Legends books or the EU books, as they used to be called, that there were force healers. But I just don't like this force being able to heal people with the force. It wasn't in the original trilogy. It wasn't in the prequel trilogy. It's a Disney sequel trilogy thing. I don't like it. I can understand why they've done it, so that they've got someone who's not a Jedi telling him he's got a destiny to do all this stuff, and he will eventually get the plans to the Death Star that will help the rebellion. Luke Skywalker, blow it up, etc., etc. But I'm just not a big fan of that sort of thing.
Do you feel like that character was put in there then just to get the message across to the audience that he is a messenger and he will essentially find the Death Star plans?
Yeah, because they're quite clear. They don't want to have the likes of. We won't be seeing any Darth Vader or Emperor in this show. We're not going to see any missing Jedi or anything like that in this series. But Star Wars does have that mystical. Well, for me, my favorite part of Star Wars is the mysticism side of Star Wars. The Fourth Jedi, etc. And I think it would have been crazy for them not to put some element of that in the show. But choosing Force Healer, I'm not sure I would have done it, but I'm not Tony Gilroy. But but yeah, I mean, I can see why they did it, and I can understand why they did it. I just think it's a little bit clumsy, and I don't know. I just don't like the idea of force being able to heal someone with the force. It's just a power that I don't really agree with, because without going into too much detail, it basically makes the first 6 films null and void, really, doesn't it? By introducing force healers.
Well, that's where my mind went with it, Martin, because if I didn't enjoy the force healing that we've seen in previous Star Wars incarnations, but like either this sort of counts Anakin's turn to the dark side, but it also makes Obi-Wan look like a sadistic monster that he's stood there watching Padme slowly die. So yeah, I didn't enjoy that either.
And Yoda.
yeah, true. 2 of them.
Yeah. So
I sort of got
but I
it
mean,
different. Sorry.
Okay. No, go on.
I just said I sort of got that scene different. I saw it as a sort of like, again, I feel that this was really far removed from what actually Star Wars is. And it felt to me that like the force healer was there just so as a sense like the force is still around. Even though it's supposed to be like Luke Skywalker at this point, it's going on to become the last ever Jedi and stuff. We know from Fable that the force is around. And because this shows had no connection with the force whatsoever, I got it as, all right, she's doing this, so then we know it's still in that Star Warsy sort of force way, if you like me. Maybe I didn't see it like that.
I agree. Yeah, I actually do agree with that.
I found it a little bit jarring, and it's one of those things that where I've thought about it and watched it. It's kind of grown on me a little bit, but I think it was more around Bix's motivation for what she ends up doing sort of like later on. It wasn't about Andor or anything like that. It was about sort of like why she made the decision she did in the later episode.
Yeah, because she paid more attention to the Force healer than Cassian did. So definitely she was more intrigued by what she was saying. They quickly get a mission, though, don't they? It was brought in by Luthen, who we don't see a lot in these 3 episodes. Not sure if there was a reason for that or whether he was just not needed. What do you guys think on that, Connor? Do you think he's starting to sort of disappear? The rebellion's outgrown him? Yeah,
well, I suppose there's that sense now that Andor and Bix, they're with the rebels, which is becoming the Rebel Alliance, and moving away from Luthen, where Luthen was the sort of master of the intelligence and the building the foundations of what was going to come. So I think that separation that they had in these episodes was kind of on purpose to show that Andor was finding his own way. You could see he was being asked, to be more involved and sort of not be so independent on what he's picking and choosing to go off his own way. So I think they purposely kind of removed Luthen from that equation to give Andor that space to show the viewer that he's sort of growing into his more rebel role as opposed to the espionage spy role he's been playing up till now.
Yeah. Andy, any thoughts?
Yeah, see, I was a little bit, where's Luthen? And it was almost as though they were treating him a bit like Saul Guerrera's character. Like he was on the outskirts, he was kind of being pushed to the edges. But I think it's just a bit of a natural progression. He was there sort of like starting it up, setting up the infrastructure. But that's not what the rebellion needs now. The rebellion needs sort of like quite a charismatic leader, which is what Mon Mothma is. And I think he's probably known that all along. Like I said, I'm not going to sort of like live in this new world that I'm going to help create. He sort of, I think he knows that. So he knows he's not going to be the leader. So I think he's probably stepping back a bit more now.
Yeah. Yeah. Si, were you a Rogue One fan at all?
No.
You weren't? No.
I've always said the same thing. If you take out the Vader scene and you take out the Tarkin scenes of Rogue One, that film is boring. That film is like this. There's nothing going on here. And so I wasn't a fan of Rogue One. And I think that's what's sort of like, because like my twin brother, he was a massive fan of Rogue One. So he was so looking forward to Andor coming. I mean, if you haven't seen Rogue One and this is a spoiler, forget it. Yes, but he dies at the end. So I'm like, I don't understand this show. You know what I mean? So like, don't get me wrong, I'm always for Star Wars. I love Star Wars like the rest of us. I do. But as I'm watching these 12 years keep passing over Disney, for me, I've got to say it's dissipating. It's disappearing. It's losing all what Star Wars is to me. It just is. We're saying that about Luthen. I just put it down to the fact of this character comes across to me a bit like the smoking man in the X-Files. Like he knows everything that's going on. He knows everybody, everything. You can't make a move without him knowing about it. And I think the strength of that character become too much when really we're expecting Mon Mothma to go and lead the rebellion. And I think now it's time to like drop his sort of importance a little bit and start pushing it onto Mon Mothma, you know, because we know this shit. Well, they both dropped Trin at the end, didn't they? Threw right under the bus. You're going, we're not. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, which I found really strange that bit, but I think that's what it was about.
The only reason I ask about the Rogue One side of things is because we see the return of Commander Draven as they are getting onto the is it the U-wing they're going into?
Yeah.
To take on their mission, which is to assassinate Dedra. So everything heads to Gorman, and that was kind of where the focus was at. Obviously, we were expecting to see the massacre, and it did come to fruition this week. A tense couple of episodes, I thought the pacing on episode 1 was a little bit slow, as we come to expect of this show, but the pacing on episode 2 and 3 I felt were a lot, everything was a lot more tense. If you thought the third episode of last week's arc was tense, I thought these two were on another level, to be honest. What did you guys think of Dedra and Syril's storyline? Let's get into that, because they've sort of come to, not to loggerheads, but they're seeing a different side of each other now, I guess. Connor, what did you think of Dedra's story in this?
I was fascinated by the shift in dynamics between the two of them, the relationship between the two of them. So we saw in the previous episodes the way sort of Syril was in awe of getting to sort of be connected with the hierarchy of the ISB and how he was sort of so in love with the fact he was, being involved with someone and having that sort of link to someone of authority, and how much he respected that authority. And then he finds out through, a whisper on the street about the mining equipment has come in, and he realizes that he's been kind of played and he's been used, and rather than being the sort of meek representation of Syril that we've seen in the last few episodes, he goes and he confronts Dedra, and we sort of see that gung-ho Syril that we saw in the fourth season, where he went to Ferrex with his band of men, and I love that turnaround, and then the fact he confronts her and they're having words. He puts his hand on her throat, but then she's able to just give him a kiss when the coast is clear, and it kind of brings him back down a little bit and calms him down, and he sort of takes that bit of affection, that he's probably been starved from his mother or all his life, and he's then back in that position where he's being able to be molded by her. And then he goes, it's sort of shifting, and then he goes into that room, and he sees the droids, and he knows what they're there for, and I think it all just comes together, and something just snaps in him, and then out he walks away from her, and that's it was that shift in dynamic I thought was well played, well written, and brilliantly acted between the two of them.
Yeah. So, you like Dedra as part of this. You say she's a good character. Do you not like the dynamic that they've got going on with Syril? I think Syril was the MVP this week.
I do. To be fair with you, I think that dynamic makes her come across as a lot more empire than what you realise. Like, she doesn't love him. There's no love there, but he's there because she wants him there. And it's like a personal life continues over. Whereas Connor said he gets all flamboyant and excited about the ISB. she is the Empire. She is. You can see it through her. It's not about it's a great job or it's trendy. It's about that she believes in the beliefs these people have. So I think that relationship with Syril, again, makes her a lot more cold-hearted in a sense to me than what she would be if there was no relationship with him, because you see it every scene between them together is always on her side. She will manipulate into our way of thinking. If it's not going right, she will turn that round immediately. And I like that. Yeah, I think it's really good.
But until he sort of stood up for himself at least, and then we see him properly trying to choke her out and find out what's going on. You know, he gets the truth out of her eventually, doesn't he? Bit of a different side of his character, Andy.
I've never been quite sure what to think about Cyril's character in the first sort of like series and sort of parts of this episode, but I think you're right. I think he seems very driven by sort of the sense of sort of justice and law and order, which is why he was drawn to the Empire and to Dedra, and he's just had his complete world shattered, and he's sort of like his viewpoint, and he's having to question all of his beliefs and everything like that. I think out of all the relationships that are in the show, I think there's Dedra and Syril and Dedra sort of is the most interesting one in terms of dynamics. It's quite an abusive relationship. I feel I feel extremely sorry for Syril, actually, which is something I didn't think I would feel at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, well, it almost seems like before his demise, he was sort of making a turn for the better, wasn't he? Whether he would ever get to rebel side of things, I don't know.
Well, this is the thing I was thinking, and I won't go into much about this, but actually, he and the rebellion, they're kind of after the same thing. They're after the justice, that sort of like that fairness, and he's just kind of picked the wrong side. And it was that line in this episode where, I mean, obviously they're having that sort of like that excellent fight scene, sort of like, I don't want to jump ahead sort of like too much, and when Andor just turns around and said, "Who are you?" And that's kind of like a double. It was like funny. It's like, oh, bloody hell. It's sort of like he's like fixated in him on all this time and he doesn't even know who he is. But Cyril's just gone through this kind of, actually, who am I? Sort of like, and I think it's sort of like struck a chord with him because his whole worldview has just been completely shattered. And he did look like he was about to put the gun down and then it was over.
Yeah, there was that hesitation moment. Well, I love the fact as well, for me, all through this season, everything has been mirrored. Everything's been a mirror. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And, you know, you can see that, you know, going back to the start with the wedding scene, where it's sort of all about decadence and luxury. And then the rebel, you know, they're fighting against the Empire soldiers on that wee planet. And that all combines up into Deirdre and Cyril's relationship is a kind of, you know, an opposite mirror look of what Bix and Andor have, where there's this love, devotion, and trust, and all that is missing from their relationship. And then even you can see that then when Syril and Andor come face to face again, they're complete sort of opposites of each other, where they both have the blind faith and belief in what they're doing is right, but completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And then, well, Martin, let's get your thoughts on the Gorman fiasco.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, just quickly with Deirdre and Syril, I thought they both had moments in this episode or the second episode where they were questioning their morality, and it looks almost as if both of them were going to make the turn, but Deirdre, you know, did what Deirdre always does and chose, you know, the Empire, you know, her career, her going forward over everything else, even though she didn't look too comfortable doing it. Whereas Syril actually surprised me, because I think I said a couple of weeks back that I didn't think Syril would be the one to, you know, perhaps switch that way. So yeah, I thought that was really well played. I thought it was excellent. But as for the actual Gorman massacre itself, I mean, it was a lesson in tension in the way they filmed that. You know, it was incredible. Each beat to that scene was amazing, right up until when the sniper took the first shot. And you you could while watching it, you could almost, you knew what was going to happen. You could tell what was going to happen, one thing after the next. And as soon as those stormtroopers started coming down the steps and just blasting willy-nilly at people, how Cyril didn't get hit, I don't know, but that's another question.
Stood out in the open, yeah.
But yeah, but for me, it was when the KX droids all came out. It was, and I think somebody said it before, that Star Wars shouldn't have to have other franchises. It should be Star Wars, which is in other franchises. But in this case, I was going to give it a pass, because when the KX droid was sort of walking towards that character, I forget her name, and it was just slowly walking towards it, I was just getting Terminator vibes, and that was so tense. And she was trying to get away, and she bumped into somebody, and she fell over, and he finally got to her, and he just threw her, for miles, broke her neck as she landed. I thought that for me was like, wow, okay, this is quite dark.
And do you know what?
I thought it was excellent.
That was all one shot where she was thrown by the droid, sort of like, and landed. That was all one shot. I mean, that was, which just added to the brutality of it. I think it was incredibly brutal. Yeah. It was difficult to watch in places. I found it, and I think that's sort of like part of the reason, because before, when we've seen the Empire and everything, it's just all stormtroopers. They can't aim. It's sort of like they miss everything. It's like they're not really sort of. I mean, they're evil, but this really kind of brought home. It's sort of like, this is really evil, sort of like genocide, sort of like just killing people, and it doesn't really hold back.
No.
I thought as well. I thought it's the little things, like how clever it was to bring in the raw recruits who are going to be the ones to get through the barriers. I mean, it seems quite obvious, but again, it's obviously it's been really well thought out, and I can't wait to watch that episode again. It was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. What about you, Si? A lot of action going on in this particular episode. Did it get you going? Did you enjoy it?
I'd say for the action scenes of it, it was good and stuff. I mean, it's always great to see Star Wars fighting the French resistance, isn't it? So she's got a berry on, aren't you, the Star Wars world?
If you were to take Star Wars out of the equation and just focus on like the writing and the story, does that make it better for you?
The thing is, it's weird, because it's like I said, aesthetically, I watch it every week. It's one of the most beautifulest shows I've ever seen in my life. It really is. But again, for me, it's character driven. It seems to give up on a lot of things it starts. Like the shining grace of me, the first Andor, was when they were in that sort of prison. They were all building the parts of the Death Star. Yeah. Electric floor and all that, one way out. And they all run out, they all dive into the ocean. And in my head, I suppose it being a bit of an Alan Moore fan, I suppose, but in my head, I'm thinking, can't wait to see what happens to a few of these. Like, there's no way Andy Serkis isn't going to be in the second one, and then we're up to show 9, and there's been absolutely nothing on that. And they seem to start what they don't finish. Like they touch all these things about Bix being a smackhead. All of a sudden, she's the crackhead of Coruscant, all of a sudden. And then that's it. A year after, no, she isn't. She's fine. That's why I'm like, well, what was the point of all that business? Well, I don't get the point. If you're going to touch such severe topics in such a non-severe topic as Star Wars, at least have the audacity to finish these stories off. There are people watching that have been through these sorts of things, and you just whitewash it, So that's something I don't really agree with. Yeah. And again, I think all that the outfits and the French resistance and all that, we on budget. I'm just waiting for Chocolate Mousse to come in. Do you know what I mean? From Top Secret. And it's just like, I don't understand it. For a show that bases itself on trauma and for mental issues, these things go around and they've just maimed everybody. Like you said, they've just thrown a woman to her death and snapped her neck. So the rebels think, we'll take one back home. So when all the Gorman people are all fine, they could just see this walking around. I'm one of you guys. I was like, no, you wouldn't do that. You've just been playing the drum on this trauma of people and what they go through, and yet you're going to remind them every day by taking one home. It just throws me out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I kind of get that. Well, let's move on then to the aftermath of Gorman. Well, actually, we didn't touch on the Andor versus Cyril bit because I did want to talk about that a little bit. It was a pretty well choreographed fight scene, and the two of them did well together. Did you enjoy that part, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, it was a dirty, messy, good old fashioned fist fight, where anything would go. I think at one stage Andor grabs a jar and cracks it over Cyril's head. It just had that kind of rawness to it, and the way if you were to have an emotional fight with your arch nemesis, after a long period of time, it would go down that way. So I really enjoyed that. And then the fact that Cyril gets the upper hand on him, it's just it's what he's wished and dreamed for so many years, just to get him back for killing those two security guards back at the very start, and then for just to be taken away from him.
Yeah. And Andor was recognised by a few of the Gorman locals, I suppose, who ended up helping him out. The hotel reception guy, and obviously Rylands who shot Cyril in the end. So,
And
was he
Sam,
helping Andor, or was he, satisfying his own revenge?
I think he said, well, there was that, yeah, definitely, but he did he recognised him, didn't he? He recognised Andor. He probably didn't know he was saving his life at that point, but yeah.
I thought that was interesting, actually, the choice of that character to kill Cyril, because he was advocating for sort of non-violent resistance, sort of like peaceful, and then he shot him in the head. So I sort of sorry for laughing there, but it's sort of, actually, I think it's sort of that realization that actually comes to a point where actually you have to meet force with force. So and I think they kind of come to that conclusion. But I just wanted to say the other guy, Sam, the guy who drove the truck into the KX unit, he caused Cinta's death in the earlier arc. And actually saved Andor. Doesn't completely make up for it, but actually it's that kind of balanced a little bit there. So
I'd like to make a quick point as well, if you don't mind, Adam. Going to Si's point about not following through, it will be very interesting to see, after we've pretty much spent 6 episodes discovering why the Empire wanted to mine Gorman. If we ever see Gorman again in the next 3 episodes, are we going to see this devastated planet that's been mined, or is it just going to be forgotten about, and we're just going to see the dish being created for the Death Star with the materials? Because it's not that I really want to see 800,000 people, dying on a planet. It would have been quite interesting to see the aftermath of the planet. After they've gone through 6 episodes explaining it.
It's funny you say that, Martin, because it crossed my head that I was looking forward to seeing Andor fleeing the planet and getting a visual of the ships coming in, because there's supposed to be an armada in space above it, but we didn't get to see any of that. It was all suggested, and I think that was a real missed opportunity for us to see a bit of Star Wars, a bit of space. Star destroyers bringing in massive, big Imperial equipment, but that was definitely missing from the episode for me.
All we got to see was the 2 TIE fighters just sort of running around over the top of the plaza.
And even the bombing of the naval base, like we saw a plume of smoke. So, they kind of left that suggestive. So it's like, okay, they're saving the CGI budget for me for the end. But there was no payoff for that.
But the second episode led us on really nicely to the third one with the aftermath of Gorman, and the tension was still there really straight from the outset, as we see Mon Mothma, practicing or getting ready to do her speech and discussing everything with Bale. How did you guys enjoy? I mean, it's difficult to pick out a scene because it just felt like one long thing. We spent most of the time on Coruscant, but how did you enjoy these parts, Si?
Not
episode,
really,
I suppose.
I suppose I'll tell you the truth. Like I said, I'm not one for sitting on any fence. For me, Mon Mothma is becoming more prattier as this show goes on. It's like the woman's just a prat. It's like she gets off her head at her daughter's wedding. First of all, she's all against him marrying him. Then she tells her daughter not to marry him. Then her daughter tells her to do one. It's like when they brought that big speaker in at that nightclub, that wedding, I was just in hysterics. And she's all like for herself, and she's over emotional. And every time she talks to someone, she floods her tears. And she comes in, like, you know, when you watch these charity events, and there's always some Karen, like middle class, and she's always fighting for something that has just nothing to do with her. That's how she's starting to come across to me. And again, that's why I think by the Luthen and all that, I've been a little bit cut out, because it's like, I'm now expected to believe that this woman goes on to lead this whole rebellion and all that, when she can't even hold her emotions together properly. So it's sort of a character's been killed for me a lot in this. I won't say any lies. It has. I'm finding it hard to believe that Lefty Karen runs the rebellion. Do you know what I mean?
She's far from the sort of leader that we see in Star Wars, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's still 2 years to get to that. So, are we going to see more of that in next week's arc? Do you think?
I hope we get that rave speaker again. I hope Haslab do that. If Haslab do that, I'll be so happy, man. If they do that, just a big speaker, bit of Coruscant techno on it. Love
it. Connor, a pretty important speech to the Senate to try and sort of let everyone know that, well, her thoughts and the fact that she's trying to get everyone to understand that the Emperor is the big problem here. Did you enjoy that part?
I did. Funny enough, now I take a lot of what Si is taking on board about the character, and I can see some of those kind of flaws there in it. It was a big build up to a speech, you know, and okay, I suppose in the sense of Star Wars, it was powerful. Finally, a senator stood up and named the Emperor as you know the truth of all evil. But I think a lot of that was trying to shoehorn into the Rebels episode, and I think there was a little bit of kind of fan pleasing going on with that. Now, I enjoyed the whole tension building up to, you were still kind of thinking, is she going to go through with it, or are they going to stop her? And she finally got to pull it off and make the speech. And then, of course, the way Andor's been, there's been a slow build up, but then that kind of getaway, are they going to make it out? Or, but I suppose we know the end. We know they had to make it out, but but that escape scene, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really a good watch, and I thought well done the way, they were supposed to go down to Dock 9, but they said that, and they changed the plan and have to come up with an alternative route and trying to see how they get out. And then just the cold, callous way that Andor sort of spots the driver and just, puts a blaster bomb right through him and keeps going. And just, you can see her reaction, you'd seen the reality of this rebellion that she's kind of been involved building. And then, his character is just acting on impulse and second nature now and just dispatching any obstacles in the way to completing the mission.
Yeah, pretty tense escape scene. Andy, did you enjoy that part of it?
I did. I want to skip back to a little bit before then, and the scenes between Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. And actually, I know there's been a lot of talk about the recasting, but I didn't mind the recasting at all. Didn't really sort of affect my opinion about it. Although I wish we got to have seen more of those two together, because it's alluded to even in series 1 that he was part of that group, that you never see them interact. And actually, my understanding was that actually the early parts of the rebellion, it was Mothma and Organa who were heavily leading it, and actually the loss of Organa was quite a big blow. But I quite liked the sort of like the scene where they were saying, "You go and I'll stay," and he couldn't explain the reason why he has to stay. And in my mind, I was thinking it's because of Leia. He has to stay because of Leia. He can't go on the run because of Leia. He has to protect, and that's almost like that secret mission that he has. That sort of like that he knows about, and no one else really knows about. But the whole escape scene, I was quite looking forward to it, and I think it was extremely well done. I was the Clovis, the driver scene. I felt a bit sorry for him because I think he was another one who was having doubts.
Yeah.
And I think he was like on the payroll, and you could see the gun next to him, but you didn't see him have a gun, and you weren't sure what he was going to do, and he just got gunned down. But yeah, and the speech she gave wasn't the same as the one in Rebels. It was slightly different as well. They did sort of make it a little bit better, but I quite liked the Erskine character as well. Yeah, Mon Mothma's aide, because he was in Rebels, and I think he even had the same hairstyle. They deliberately gave this dreadful hairstyle in Andor just to match the one he had in Rebels.
Yeah. And he played a pretty important part in the end of it.
He did.
In the end of it all, yeah. Martin, did you enjoy all of that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm not the biggest Rebels fan in the world, but I believe that the speech that she gives in Rebels is a different speech that she does over an intercom to the galaxy. Because I think even in Andor, they said to Andor himself that she was going to go to Yavin on a different freighter, which obviously would end up being the Ghost in Rebels the series. But I believe that she does that communication from another ship and not from the Senate, which is why in Rebels you see Bail Organa on Yavin 4 and not in the Senate where he was in this episode. But I'm not 100% certain. Someone in the comments will correct me, Delvian.
I can correct you now, Martin.
Okay, go on. Okay, go for it.
She does the second speech at Dantooine. So the second speech, so it's a different speech that she gives at Dantooine that I was watching. But anyway.
Okay, cool. And to Si's point about Mon Mothma, I do agree. But what I would say is, all she's been basically is the money woman in this series so far, and since they started this, she's not had any experience with people getting gunned down, people getting blown up, and we've seen several experiences she's had during the first and second season where she's shocked at the absolute brutality of what's going on around her, and because of her, that I think after this episode and what she's gone through with the escape will turn her into the leader that we'll perhaps see in Return of the Jedi.
Maybe I'm forgetting that, Martin, that this isn't the finish. We've got 3 to go. We've got, like Adam says, another year up to. So maybe you're right there. This is probably what hardens her up.
Yeah, because when we see her in Rogue One, she does seem more of a leader. Absolutely, she's a bit of a waif really at the moment. But also when they form sorry to do this as well, but when they form Bail Organa and Mon Mothma formed the committee that was going to try and stand up to Palpatine in the prequels, which was part of the deleted scenes, Revenge of the Sith. I believe that Bail was always going to be the silent partner of it, so he was going to have absolutely no direct involvement in it. Therefore, that's why you would never see Bail up until Rogue One have any involvement with being on Yavin, etc. That's my understanding of it anyway. But in terms of the episode itself, this was my favorite of the 3. I actually preferred this one to the second episode, because one thing that people deride about prequels is the politics and the Senate and all that stuff, and I absolutely eat that stuff up. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And just when they were talking about subsection 281/B, with and all that stuff, I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, yeah, I'm writing that down. I'm looking in my manual. I love all that sort of stuff. I love a bit of politics. So yeah, that was great. And I always love seeing Coruscant. It's my favorite planet in Star Wars. I love seeing the Senate. I always think that's great. I mean, I thought the escape was really, really tense. I think Andor, at this point he's showing how much of a warrior he is. How much of a, everything he's learned from Luthen has been put on display in this episode. It's absolutely brilliant. And just one quick thing about Luthen as well, and then I'll stop talking. I think Luthen has realised that things have moved on now. He's the one person doing all these surgical strikes everywhere. That time's over, and his time, he doesn't want to, he doesn't, because he can't he's been doing it for so long, he can't trust anybody anymore, but he realizes that it's now Mon Mothma's time to go and lead this band that's now going to be an army, and become a rebel alliance. And I thought that was quite nice in the scenes that we saw with Luthen. And I just feel like, you know, Luthen's not going to be around after the next 3 episodes, and I just hope that he goes out in some amazing blaze of glory, because I think he's probably been my favorite character in the show, and Dedra as well. But I think actually, how cool would it be if they both took each other out? How poetic would that be? Yeah, I love this episode so much. Sorry, shut up now.
Yeah,
I think that's quite pathetic. I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of people still to lose, isn't there? We know we're likely to lose a few next week. Martin, you predicted that Bix was going to die this week, but we did lose Bix. Like whether she'll actually die, we don't know. Do you think she'll be back for the remaining 3 episodes at some point?
Anyone?
Yeah, I think. Part of me thinks no. Part of me thinks Disney are thinking, oh yeah, we can get a bit of mileage out of that character in another series down the road. So we'll
leave you side, right?
Off as well. When I saw, I thought it was very loosely written, the way she just sort of decided, you know, I'm going to go my own way and give you this. I thought that was a bit cheap writing to sort of take her out of the story. And yeah, my mind is like yours. I went straight to spin off in the back of my mind when I saw that.
Yeah.
For me, you've got 3 different lead characters, all female in Andor. And even though they're wrote differently, all their actual characters and eventualities are exactly the same. They're all cold with the partners. They all want power. Some have power, want more of it. They're all going to end up a leader at some point. And it just feels like, even though one of them's like a poor dowdy, just rebel starting off as a soldier, another one's a general in a big empire, and the other one's going on to be the leader of the rebellion, their actual stories are very, very alike. Very, very alike indeed. So it's amazing how we look at Dedra as like the character that we can't get behind in the sense of the empire. But Mon Mothma is exactly the same natured, exactly the same. Same with her husband, same with other things. Want things done, won't put up with any no. If it's not her opinion, she don't want to know. Do you know? It's like all that goes to my speech. I'm going to make this speech. Well, you don't have to. No, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make this speech, then I'm going to do one. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, they're all very much alike, the women in it.
Yeah. That reminds me, though, because there was one kind of thing over this whole escape. There was all this build-up with her family, her husband and her daughter, and there's no mention. And I wonder if that's going to come back in the next arc, because they're targets now. I mean, you would have thought she would have tried to warn them or something, or even Dedra tried to warn Syril. It's like, hide, and I'll tell you when it's safe. She didn't do that with her husband and kid.
I thought about that, Andy, as well, and I think Andor has been a lot of long payoffs. So I'm presuming we're going to see something along those lines, where, you know, there was such a build up to the wedding. There has to be a payoff for all that.
I think because the daughter's not married to the gangster now, so she might be protected through that. And the husband, I mean, who knows?
She didn't care.
Just get that Bix perhaps turning up in a future show. Who would be interested, just going off the cuff here, who would be interested if they did an Andor style show, but they did it during the sort of the post A New Hope, Star Wars film? So perhaps it took place on Echo Base, or the rebels trying to find Echo Base. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that would ruin the original trilogy if they were to try and do something like that?
No, but I don't think I'd use the Andor character. I'd use a different character for it, Martin. I think I'd go back to the fables of Star Wars, because I've always said the same thing. In 12 years, considering there's so adamant on diversity. I'm still yet to see myself represented in Star Wars. There's no Han Solo, there's no Luke Skywalker, and there never has been in 12 years of Disney Star Wars. I would say to start getting Star Wars maybe back onto that track of like thinking of all of us again. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's time to, I'd say I agree with that, but I wouldn't say with any character that we know so far. I'd use somebody completely new.
I've always found it very curious that they've never done sort of like something set in the original trilogy. The only stories we have are like Marvel comics. And I mean, even an animation sort of like show, I would have thought, why on earth not do this? So, but for some reason, they seem dead set against it. So
they might be scared of us doing it. If they did it wrong,
yeah. So, is there anything to add before we go into like sort of our predictions and ratings? Si, anything?
I don't know. It's funny what Martin said then. You know, considering that we spoke tonight a lot about what they've got to tie in and what the tie-ins are coming, there's going to be a lot to fit in 3 episodes. Because I don't, if I'm right, there's no season 3, is there? This is it now, isn't it? After this, Andor's done.
Yeah.
So maybe they just do a Rogue One and kill them all off. Maybe they just do that. You know what I mean? You don't know. So
yeah. Connor. Sorry.
Just going back to the Force healer on that point. So just to give it a negative, I suppose, I kind of thought they used that story to promote Andor as to some space Jesus status, which further diluted Luke Skywalker a little bit. You know, where Andor is really important and Luke wouldn't have been able to do without him. So that little story I didn't enjoy. I didn't like that. As for everything else, though, particularly, you know, the build up to the Gorman scenes, and then the Coruscant escape, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, Andy.
Melshi. They finally brought back Melshi.
Yes,
from the first series. I've been thinking, where is he? Where's he been? Has he been on that sort of Florida planet, Miami planet for sort of like for 3 years? But that was great.
That's Blackpool.
It is, isn't it? It's quite near Blackpool.
It is. That's where it was filmed, wasn't it?
No wonder he didn't want to leave then. So
listen, it's upstairs, Andy.
I mean, I thought these episodes were great. I actually think the visuals, the production design, they spent a lot of money on this series, but you can tell. And with like other series like The Acolyte, they spent a lot of money, and you kind of think, where the hell did you spend that money? You can tell where they've spent that money on this in terms of the sort of like the sets and everything. And I even think the music was pretty good in this one as well. It was sort of like it helped with the tension all the way through. And I thought the acting was spot on, because sometimes in Star Wars the acting could be a little bit ropey. And I think in that first arc, sort of like actually on the Yavin planet, the acting was a bit, okay. But in here, I thought even the Force healer, everything was just sort of dead on acting.
Yeah. Martin, anything to add?
I really enjoyed the whole arc. I think I forgot to say Melshi. It's great to have Melshi back, because he was one of my favourite sort of background characters in Rogue One. So happy to have him back. And we've also obviously got K2 coming back next week, and I can't wait, because I love K2. Disney have got a very, very checkered history of adding droids to their movies, but for me, K2 has been an overwhelming success when that one came out. And I genuinely believe we'll be seeing Andy Serkis in the next episode. I'm
big predictions.
Sure.
Big
prediction.
Yeah. You're not to finish that one off. It would be.
Yeah.
I think we'll see him.
I just want to say, because you were saying, where's Melshi? Where's B2? B2 EMO, he can't still be on that planet, can he?
Oh yeah,
I was really hoping the way they worked around the KX droid not being Imperial was to put B2's memory unit into K2.
I thought they were going to do that.
That's where I thought it was going as well.
Yeah.
I was
It didn't
hoping
even, didn't even
hoping
occur
for
to
it.
me.
No,
Yeah.
I was really hoping for that, but yeah, well,
Mm.
maybe next week. Maybe next week. Okay, let's get the ratings then. Si, has it gone up from a 3 for you?
No, 3.
No, 3. Fair enough. Connor?
Again, I'm going to say solid 9. I've just enjoyed the story. I've just enjoyed and we're all going to have different views on it, which is fine. But for me, I've enjoyed the slow build, the long playoff. The tension building kind of episodic way that it's been done. So yeah, I'm going to stick with a 9.
Okay, good. Andy?
I'm going up to a 9 as well. I think there's a lot of stuff from earlier arcs that are starting to pay off now. So I was happy with this episode. I think it's not. I'm sorry, Si, you're going to hang yourself again when you hear me say this. I think this is not only sort of like good Star Wars, it's just good television as well. It's well written and well directed. So look at your face, Si.
I said at the beginning, Andy, to watch this, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. It keeps my eyes on it. And there's a scene where he goes into his office and it's like a brown and a cream, but then these beautiful, like navy green, like 70s boxes are working on the aesthetics of that. As an artist myself, I look out for things like that, and I'm like, whoever works on this show for that is just absolutely, honestly, it's the beautifulest thing I've seen in a long time for a TV show. But again, beautiful TV, not beautiful Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of a mix for it. It keeps me watching because, again, aesthetically, it looks amazing. The characters, some characters that keep me watching, like Dedra will keep me watching a show like that. But Syril's mum, no, she won't.
Okay. You don't need to worry about him anymore. Martin, what's your rating?
Yeah, I've gone from 8 to 8.5, and I'm going to go 9 as well for this week. I mean, there wasn't really much to complain about except for the Force healer for me. Yeah, I absolutely love this, and I will be watching this probably again in the next couple of days all the way through. And I'd just like to say one more thing as well. Thank God they didn't release these week by week, because I don't think we'd be having the same enjoyment. I think we'd be frustrated as anything if they were doing this week by week. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I think they've learned from series 1 there, or season 1. I'm going to also give it a 9, to be honest. Sorry, Si, it's 9s across the board, because I just thought, I think actually the first of the 3 episodes in this arc brought that down. It could have been a lot higher, because I thought the second 2 were brilliant. But that's just my thoughts.
No, okay. Listen, I'll be the first to admit I may be wrong. It may come a time where I watch Andor back and think I was totally wrong. Do you know what I mean? There may be a time, but maybe I'm not that used to something being so far stretched from what I know of Star Wars, and it's not. And maybe it just takes a slow process for me to get involved in this sort of thing. I don't believe in adult Star Wars, children's Star Wars, the gaming Star Wars. I believe in Star Wars. That's what I believe in.
The original
Star Wars
trilogy
has always been universal from the very beginning, you know. So maybe it's that. Maybe I'm just not used to this sort of massive change.
I can understand.
That's a valid point. So I can see that that's a valid argument, because George Lucas always maintained Star Wars was for children, and I think for me, I'm enjoying it because it's a grown-up Star Wars. So effectively, that proves the point that you're making, that it doesn't feel like Star Wars for you. So I think you're totally justified to say that or feel that about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's room for all different opinions about it. I think they're trying to create different strands of stuff for different people to enjoy, because I think they're trying to broaden stuff out, and that's okay as well. Sort of like, we don't have to like everything. So,
no,
absolutely,
and we don't.
And we don't. No. No. Excellent, good stuff. Well, with that, it's time to put an end to this. Thanks to all our guests for coming on. Thank you, Si, Andy, and Connor. Have you got anything that you want to promote before we go? Si?
No.
You're good. No. Connor.
Follow Andy on Instagram and follow Si on Instagram. That's my promotion done.
And follow Connor as well. Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone for watching now on. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the arc. Subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you next time for the finale. See you later.
Cheers, lads. Great chat.